Listening, fill in the blanks.
Let's start.
Any prospective time travelers may have to overcome more physical and logical hurdles than merely overtaking the speed of light. One such problem, posited by René Barjavel in his 1943 text Le Voyageur Imprudent, is the so-called grandfather paradox. Barjavel theorized that, if it were possible to go back in time, a time traveler could potentially kill his own grandfather. If this were to happen, however, the time traveler himself would not be born, which is already known to be true. In other words, there is a paradox in circumventing an already known future. Time travel is able to facilitate past actions that mean time travel itself cannot occur.
Humans one day step across the same boundary that the neutrinos have? World-renowned astrophysicist Stephen Hawking believes that once spaceships can exceed the speed of light, humans could feasibly travel millions of years into the future in order to repopulate Earth in the event of a forthcoming apocalypse. This is because, as the spaceships accelerate into the future, time would slow down around them. Hawking concedes that bygone eras are off-limits. This would violate the fundamental rule that cause comes before effect. Hawking is therefore reserved yet optimistic. Time travel was once considered scientific heresy, and I used to avoid talking about it for fear of being labeled a crank. These days I'm not so cautious.
Who was interviewed by ITV News' Alastair Stewart at the festival, said he wanted an open debate about whether the corporation should do everything it has done in the past. He said he had a slight sense that people who rushed to defend the BBC were trying to have an argument that's never been started. Whatever my view is, I don't determine what programs the BBC should show, he added. That's the job of the BBC. Mr. Whittingdale said any speculation that the Conservative Party had always wanted to change the BBC due to issues such as its editorial line was absolute nonsense. A barmaid stands alone behind her bar, fitted out in a black bodice that has a frilly white neckline, and with a spray of flowers sitting across her décolletage. She rests her hands on the bar and gazes out forlornly at a point just below the viewer, not quite making eye contact. Also on the bar are some bottles of liquor and a bowl of oranges. But much of the activity in the room takes place in the reflection of a mirror behind the barmaid. Through this mirror we see an auditorium, bustling with blurred figures and faces, men in top hats, a woman examining the scene below her through binoculars, another in long gloves, even the feet of a trapeze artist, demonstrating acrobatic feats above his adoring crowd. In the foreground of the reflection a man with a thick mustache is talking with the barmaid.
It's true that the causes of music brain oddities remain poorly understood. However, Sachs could have done more to draw out some of the implications of the careful observations that he and other neurologists have made and of the treatments that have been successful. For example, he might have noted that the many specific dissociations among components of music comprehension, such as loss of the ability to perceive harmony, but not melody, indicate that there is no music center in the brain. Because many people who read the book are likely to believe in the brain localization of all mental functions, this was a missed educational opportunity.
In many of the cases described here, the patient with music brain symptoms is reported to have normal EEG results. Although Sachs recognizes the existence of new technologies, among them far more sensitive ways to analyze brain waves than the standard neurological EEG test, he does not call for their use. In fact, although he exhibits the greatest compassion for patients, he conveys no sense of urgency about the pursuit of new avenues in the diagnosis and treatment of music brain disorders. This absence echoes the book's preface, in which Sachs expresses fear that the simple art of observation may be lost if we rely too much on new technologies. He does call for both approaches, though, and we can only hope that the neurological community will respond.
The challenge for educators and policymakers is to shape the evolution of national identity in such a way that the rights of all citizens, including school children, are respected, and the cultural, linguistic, and economic resources of the nation are maximized. To waste the resources of the nation by discouraging children from developing their mother tongues is quite simply unintelligent from the point of view of national self-interest. A first step in providing an appropriate education for culturally and linguistically diverse children is to examine what the existing research says about the role of children's mother tongues in their educational development.
It is easy to understand how this happens. When children are learning through a minority language, they are learning concepts and intellectual skills too. Pupils who know how to tell the time in their mother tongue understand the concept of telling time. In order to tell timey in the majority language, they do not need to relearn the concept. Similarly, at more advanced stages, the transfer across languages and other skills such as knowing how to distinguish the main idea from the supporting details of a written passage or story, and distinguishing fact from opinion. Studies of secondary school pupils are providing interesting findings in this area, and it would be worthy extending this research.
Sand is usually composed of hard minerals such as quartz that cannot be broken down into silt or clay. Yellow, brown, and reddish shades of sand indicate their presence of iron compounds. Red sand is composed of quartz coated by a layer of iron oxide. White sands are nearly pure gypsum. Sand with a high percentage of silicate can be used in glass making. Sandstone is created by sand mixed with lime, chalk, or some other material that acts as a binding agent that is deposited in layers at the bottom of a sea or other area and pressed together into rock by the great pressure of sediments that are deposited on top of it over thousands or millions of years.
In a similar vein to Diego Velázquez, much earlier work Las Meninas, Manet uses the mirror to toy with our ideas about which details are true to life and which are not. In the foreground, for example, the barmaid is positioned upright, her face betraying an expression of lonely detachment. Yet in the mirrored reflection she appears to be leaning forward and to the side, apparently engaging in conversation with her mustachioed customer. As a result of this, the customer's stance is also altered. In the mirror, he should be blocked from view as a result of where the barmaid is standing, yet Manet has repositioned him to the side. The overall impact on the viewer is one of a dreamlike disjuncture between reality and illusion.
Like, share, subscribe the channel, and press the bell icon for further updates.